All right. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the BookChanging podcast. I am the owner of BookChanging. My name is Tanner, and I'm here with my buddy Chris.
What's up?
All right, and we're back again with a new book. The title of this book is Wild at Heart, and I wanted to take a second to thank Booknotes 101. On Instagram, you can find him. His name is Mark, and he sent me a free copy of this book. He's a little bit older than me and you, and he said he wished he would have read this book when he was young. And so he's the one that reached out and said, you need to read this.
So he recommended you the book?
He recommended it, and he sent it.
Nice.
So he sent me a free copy.
Nice.
And, so I wanted to thank him because that was incredible. And I thought this was a great book and wanted to do another podcast on it to dive in a little bit deeper. I already shared some excerpts on my Instagram, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper.
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's start with your overall opinion of the book, what you thought people could learn from it, why you enjoyed it.
So overall, I really, really like the book. We were just speaking about, this is one of the first books that I've read that is Christian based, and it's in line with what I believe in as far as me going through my Christian walk every single day and me trying to improve. This book came at the right time, and not only was the reason I read this book because of it's Christian based, but it talks about your masculinity.
Yep. Yeah, that's the reason I really liked it too. Is it's a mix of masculinity with an unconventional viewpoint on Christianity.
Right.
And so he touches on Jesus as a masculine figure, and it kind of goes against what a Christian church has you believe Jesus was.
Right. And okay, so let me ask you, what does the Christian church make you believe that who Jesus was?
From my personal experience, the church would have me believe that Jesus was very trying to keep the peace in every single situation.
Yes.
And he brings up specific scripture where it's quite the opposite. Jesus is a strong masculine figure that stands up for what he believes in.
Stands up for what he believes in, that's right.
And he's just strong, is how you would define him.
A man's man.
And so let's start off with my first excerpt. Let me see.
You're going to page 5?
Yeah, I'm on page 4 and 5. And, you said it started off kind of slow, and I've heard that. But I also thought that it started off good right here off immediately on page 4 and 5.
Okay.
Where he talks, he relates it to Adam and Eve in the story of Eden's garden. And he relates masculinity to that story. And he says, man was born from the outback, from the untamed part of creation. We long to return. It's when men most come alive. As John Muir said, when a man comes to the mountains, he comes home. The core of a man's heart is undomesticated, and that is good. I am not alive in an office, as one North Face ad has said it. I am not alive in a taxi cab. I am not alive on a sidewalk. Amen to that. Their conclusion, never stop exploring. And so that's another key theme in this book is adventure and kind of being one with the wilderness. And getting out of your comfort zone. And he talks about, that what we just read. It's like he says, over here on page 5, he says the masculine heart needs a place where nothing is prefabricated, modular, non-fat, Ziploc franchised, online, or microwavable, where there are no deadlines, cell phones, or committee meetings, where there is room for the soul. Moses does not encounter the living God at the mall. He finds him somewhere out in the deserts of Sinai. And so it's passages like that are so powerful to me in this book.
Because that's really the essence of a man, to go out and explore.
Yeah, it's easy to lose yourself in modern society.
Exactly, to go out really to explore who you are and what you were called to do on this earth.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's how you kind of find what it is that you desire.
Yes.
You know, when you're alone and like going on hikes in wilderness, it's like getting in touch with that wild side.
Right.
It's an interesting idea, and I don't think I've ever heard it before, to be honest.
Yeah. And to your point, man, we have to go to page 42. And I want to talk about the lion scene.
Yep.
So basically, and this hit home with me, man, because he said that he went to the zoo, and he was in the zoo, and he came across this lion, and he mentioned in the book that he was observing the lion and observing how he was walking and the motions of the lions, and he even said that he locked eye to eye with the lion. And you know, the lion is the king of the jungle. He's a beast. He's supposed to be out there killing and bringing the food back to his family and surviving. But when he viewed this lion, the lion was almost sad, depressed, and caged in at the zoo.
Yep.
And he can tell that when he would roar, he wasn't really roaring. It was more of like a cry. Like he didn't want to be locked in.
Yep.
And on page 43, it says, "For after years of living in a cage, a lion is no longer a lion. A lion no longer even believes it is a lion. And a man no longer believes he is a man."
Yep.
So he's basically relating the lion to a man that's caged in and
Yep.
Not fulfilling his purpose and what a man should actually be doing, and the man's life assignment on this earth, you know? That hit home with me crazy.
Yeah. And then on that same page, he says, how come when men look into their hearts, they don't discover something valiant and dangerous, but instead find anger, lust, and fear? And I think that kind of relates to the modern day church.
Right.
It's centered on what men are doing wrong. I mean, what people are doing wrong, but in particular, what men are doing wrong, you know, as far as like lust.
Yeah.
And the things that you desire are not correct. But it's like, he relates, you know, like Jesus was a wild man too. Like Jesus had those characteristics of typical strong masculinity, where he was not, you know, this nice boy.
Yeah, he wasn't always just like the nice guy, just going around healing people, you know.
Yep.
There's definitely some conflict with him.
Yep.
And the people around him, you know.
Yeah. So let me see. I like this quote. It's just a quick quote. He said, "Why are so many men addicted to sports? It's the biggest adventure many of them ever taste."
Yep.
And that hit home with me. It's like, yeah, I see that a lot in myself and in the people that surround me. It's like, you know, you'd rather watch a sport or play a video game instead of go on a real life adventure or do like a real life sport.
Exactly. Yep.
And then he continues and says, so many guys have been told to put that adventurous spirit behind them and be responsible. Which is another powerful quote.
And why do you think people say that? Why do you think people say to put that spirit behind you? I almost think people say that because they want you to play it safe.
Yeah, and I think it's seen as childlike.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
True. They want you to, I think they want you to play it safe, and they just want you to go after security.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, I think they just want you to be secure with your life, you know? Maybe they don't feel comfortable enough with
risk.
With them going out and having risk and taking risks and going on adventures and being wild at heart. So they want to see you be comfortable and want you to be in the same boat as them, you know?
Yeah. It's a reflection of themselves.
Right.
When people say that, definitely. And right here on page 81 was like another big realization. And I thought, just real quick, he said, if you take one passage out of Scripture and hold it up while ignoring all others, you will come to absurd conclusions. And so I think a lot of people do that. They take a scripture, or they take a one passage out of Scripture, and they say, this is how it's supposed to be.
Right.
If I did that out of this book, there would be no cohesiveness. Like, you wouldn't understand at all what this book is about. So
exactly.
people doing that with the Bible it's an interesting thing.
Right.
And so right here he says, if Jesus intended to teach us never resist a bully, why does he also tell his disciples, but now if you have a purse, take it, and also a bag, and if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one? Buy a sword, the disciple said. See, Lord, here are 2 swords. That is enough, he replied. He arms them. And that little matter of making a whip and using it to clear the temple, that doesn't seem like turning the other cheek, now does it? And so this is another part where he paints Jesus in a different light than I think the Christian church paints Jesus. Jesus was a strong, masculine figure who wasn't afraid to, quote unquote, use the sword.
Yeah, because we were taught in the Bible, if we get hit in the face, get hit in the cheek, we turn it to the other side, That's interesting.
Yeah.
That he painted that picture.
And then another interesting thing he brings up, at least 3 to 4 times as many boys than girls are essentially defined as ill because their preferred patterns of playing don't fit easily into the structure of the school. Well-meaning psychomanagers then prescribe tranquilizing drugs for ADD such as Ritalin. The situation is scandalous. The use of drugs so disproportionately among boys betrays the failure of school authorities to understand sex differences. The only disease these boys have is being male. And so that goes with another book I read. It talks about the differences between men being diagnosed with ADD or ADHD and women. And in the school system, a lot of that relates to how a school is structured.
Right.
So men are supposed to be adventurous, wild, outgoing, outdoors.
Yeah.
And if you sit in the classroom all day, of course you're going to be labeled as ADD.
Right.
And so I think that was another interesting quote.
Because it goes back to just the essence of a man. They want to be out doing something and not really sitting down in a chair all day,
Yeah. And to continue on what you said about the lion, on page 85, he says, think back to that great big lion in that tiny cage.
Yeah.
Why would we put a man in a cage?
Yep.
For the same reason we put a lion there. For the same reason we put God there. He's dangerous. To paraphrase Sayers, we've also paired the claws of the lion cub of Judah. A man is a dangerous thing. Women don't start wars. Violent crimes aren't for the most part committed by women. Our prisons aren't filled with women. Columbine wasn't the work of 2 young girls. Obviously something has gone wrong within the masculine soul.
Yep.
And the way we've decided to handle it is to take the dangerous nature away entirely. Which is a crazy realization.
Yeah. That's powerful.
Like, when he says Columbine wasn't done by 2 girls, that's crazy to think about. Because that really is like the worst form of masculinity.
Yeah.
And I think that's just, I think that those 2, it was 2, right? In Columbine.
Yeah.
Those 2 boys, like, they just didn't express their masculinity correctly.
Exactly.
I think they totally could have been great men. They just took the wrong ways.
Took the wrong path, yep. Wow.
And then he continues and says, our society produces plenty of boys, but very, very few men. We don't know how to initiate boys into men. And second, we're not sure we really want to. And so this is a continuing theme throughout the book. He talks about, later on he talks about self-sabotage.
Yep.
You remember him talking about that?
Yep.
And we'll get to that, but self-sabotage, and he talks about men will self-sabotage because they're afraid of their true potential. So a man is afraid of what he really could be, and so instead he'll self-sabotage himself to what he knows, taking the wrong path, doing the wrong things, staying with the wrong people, because that's what you know, and you're afraid of what's on the other side of that.
Yeah. And what is that fear that men have to live out their full potential? Is it that they're scared that they can't do it? They can't fulfill it?
It's like being afraid of the unknown.
Right.
You don't know what that is. You don't know what that potential is. And what if you give up all of this to chase that potential and it doesn't work out?
And it doesn't work out, yeah.
So it's all of those fears. Like, I feel that for sure.
Definitely.
And another great key point is validation. We were talking about this earlier.
Yep.
I think this reason right here is a great reason to read the book.
Yep.
Wholeheartedly, like, this is one of my favorite things I got from this book. And so on page 96, he says, "This is why so many men secretly fear their wives. She sees him as no one else does, sleeps with him, knows what he's made of. If he has given her the power to validate him as a man, then he has also given her the power to invalidate him as well." And, we were having that conversation, and I think that's one of the most powerful things is the ability to seek validation from nobody but yourself or God. And at the end of the day, that's the same thing. You are God at the end of the day.
Because that could be a deadly trap to get yourself into, especially for young men that seek validation from women.
Yep.
It could be a never-ending cycle,
Constantly searching for it.
It's not only seeking validation from women, but also seeking validation from society. We were talking about, what do people seek validation for? Is having a nice car, a nice home, having that almighty degree that everybody seeks to have. And once you have that, they feel like they're validated to be successful or to be considered successful in our society,
Yep.
Well, like you just said, the only validation you need is from yourself and God.
Yes, sir. And continuing right here, he says, he's giving examples, and he says, "Another man, Richard, became verbally abusive toward his wife in the early years of their marriage. His vision for his life was that he was meant to be Romeo, and therefore she must be Juliet. When she turned out not to be the golden-haired woman, he was furious, because that meant, you see, that he was not the heroic man. I remember seeing a picture of Julia Roberts without costume and makeup. Oh, I realized she's just an ordinary woman." And this concept is a concept from a book called Iron John, which is another incredible book on masculinity. But he mentions the golden-haired woman, and in Iron John, he talks about kind of putting women on a pedestal and having an idea of women. It's like she's the goddess. But if you have an idea, if you view women as the goddess, you will be let down over and over again, and you're constantly going to be chasing the goddess because this woman's not good enough. I need a better one. And so that's why I highlighted this idea, because you're kind of trying to, it relates to looking for validation through women, because you want that goddess woman, you want the best woman you can get, but at the end of the day,
there'll always be somebody that's prettier.
She will always be an ordinary woman as well. So there's always going to be one that's better, and she's always going to be an ordinary woman, and you're going to want more from her. If you don't understand that.
For sure.
So I really love that idea.
And just not to cut you off, another theme that I've seen throughout the whole book is not, as a man, not going into a battle alone. And the importance of having a group of men around you to support you and to go into battle with. What do you think about that? 'Cause I think, to me, it hit home for me, because right now I'm at a point in my life where I'm barely trying to surround myself with a group of guys or a group of people that I can really go through life with. I've always felt like I've been kind of by myself, grinding and doing what I have to do by myself and moving on my own. And then I found my fiance, and then it's like, okay, her and I, we can do some damage together, but you can only do so much with one or two people. But if you have a group of people, a tribe, people to go to war with, an army, you can accomplish so much, and it's tremendous what you can accomplish,
Yeah, definitely. It relates to that book you're reading right now, Tribe. Just having that group of friends, and we talked about it last time with the Way of the Superior Man. He talks about having a group of men friends that you can go to and confide in, and I think
can hold you accountable. That's so important. when I see young people like you that have a group of guys that you guys can hold each other accountable for like little things, little challenges that you guys going on, that's huge. That's big time to have that.
It really is life-changing.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. I love that idea. And to continue, he talks about facing your fears as well. And on page 114, he says, in other words, face your fears head on. Let the wound surface from beneath it all. Losing the false self is painful, though it is a mask. It's one we've worn for years, and losing it can feel like losing a close friend. Underneath the mask is all the hurt and fear we've been running from, hiding from. And so that mask he talks about is kind of the labels that we attach to ourselves. You know, like you mentioned earlier, it's the school you graduated from, the car you drive, the watch you wear, the job you have. It's stripping yourself of all of those and seeing what's beneath it. As well as like stripping yourself from your relationships, you know? Kind of getting away from those relationships and saying, you know, who am I? What are my morals, my principles? What do I believe in? And having that sense of understanding of who you really are. You got to strip yourself of all of the externalities.
What's beneath it all.
Yeah. And that's the journey towards freedom and authenticity, he says. And another key point, he talks about walking away from the woman. And so I'll read this on page 115. As we walk away from the false self, we will feel vulnerable and exposed. We will be sorely tempted to turn to our comforts for some relief, those places that we've found solace and rest. Because so many of us have turned to the woman for our sense of masculinity, we must walk away from her as well. I do not mean you leave your wife. I mean you stop looking to her to validate you. Stop trying to make her come through for you. Stop trying to get your answer from her. For some men, this may mean disappointing her. If you've been a passive man tiptoeing around your wife for years, never doing anything to rock the boat, then it's time to rock it. Stand up to her, get her mad at you. And I think that's powerful.
Break that down a little bit. Because a lot of people might hear that and be like, you know, what do you mean rock the boat? You know, get her upset. Go ahead, break it down a little bit. I want to hear your opinion.
So, well, he continues and says, for those of you violent men, it means you stop abusing her. So basically go against the status quo of what you've been doing.
Gotcha.
So if you're in a committed relationship, go against the status quo of what you've been doing.
Essentially trying something new, trying a new formula.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you're passive, be more aggressive. If she says, you know, I want to do this, say, you know, no, I'm going to do this. And if you don't want to do that, that's okay. But I'm going to do this.
Right.
And he says,
we're not saying if you're being good to your woman to do the opposite. We're not saying, you know,
don't go against that status quo.
Don't go against that. You know, continue doing that.
Yeah, but
that's a good point you make. You know,
ultimately, stop looking for her to validate you.
Right.
You know, and I think that if you're not in a committed relationship, you know, we talked about promiscuity earlier. I think that if you're not in a committed relationship, put promiscuity aside and kind of focus on yourself. Like he said, strip away the masks, and face the fears, and understand who it is that you really are before you go to a woman. Because then you'll have that sense of, I know who I am.
I know I am.
What I want. I don't need a woman to validate me.
That's big. That's big time to find who you are, and to find out, you know, where you want to go in life before you get to a woman. You know.
And right here he talks about purpose. He says a man needs a much bigger orbit than a woman. He needs a mission, a life purpose, and he needs to know his name. Only then is he fit for a woman. For only then does he have something to invite her into. In the Maasai tribe in Africa, a young man cannot court a woman until he has killed a lion. That's their way of saying until he has been initiated. And he continues to say, he will pursue her, not to offer his strength, but to drink from her beauty and to be affirmed by her and feel like a man. And so that right there is a toxic way of relating to women from a masculine perspective. so to say, before you've been initiated, before you've killed that lion, before you stop searching for validation, you will go to women trying to take from her beauty, trying to take from her as a whole, and be affirmed by her.
By her, yeah.
And so I think that's really powerful.
So it's basically saying that as a man, you need to find your purpose first. You need to find your why, your reason.
Yeah, definitely.
For what you're doing before you go after that woman.
Yeah. Which I think is such a big concept that
it is.
Young guys won't grasp.
They don't grasp it,
Because even me, like, I hear that, and I'm like, yeah, okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to just brush it off. Like,
but it's so crucial to figure out what your why is, because
we all know that's the focus.
That's the focus, but not only that, but life is tough. And when it gets tough, it's fighting you, and it wants to knock you down. And if your why isn't big enough, if your purpose isn't big enough, you're going to get smacked to the ground every single time. You know, that lion is going to kill you instead of you killing it, right?
Yeah, definitely. And he even says a positive way for a man to relate to women is right here. The masculine journey always takes a man away from the woman in order that he may come back to her with his question answered. And that question is spoken about earlier in the book. And that question is, am I enough? Do I have what it takes to be a real man? That's the question that every man is seeking to answer. And he says, a man does not go to a woman to get his strength. He goes to her to offer it.
To offer it, yeah.
And that's the ultimate place for a man to be, is I have the strength, and it's overflowing, and I offer it to you.
Yep.
It's not, I'm going to you because I want you to validate me so I feel strong.
Yeah.
That's
so
different.
now if you go to the woman and you do that, now she's going to be questioning you. You know what I'm saying? Questioning the relationship.
Your clarity.
Yep, exactly. Questioning, does this guy really know himself? Why is he coming to me for that,
Yeah, so I think that's one of the biggest things in this book that I learned is, not to search for that validation.
That's big time.
To really understand yourself on that deep level before you go to that. And he talks about the traitor within, and he quotes John Owen. He says, however strong a castle may be, if a treacherous party resides inside, the castle cannot be kept safe from the enemy. Traitors occupy our own hearts, ready to side with every temptation and surrender to them all. And so I think that's a powerful quote. Temptation,
Yep.
Temptation is something that we all deal with, but I think it's definitely
everybody.
It's the self-sabotage,
And when I think of that quote, I go back to having the right people to go into battle with. If you got this castle, you got this fortress, and you don't got the right people in there, they're going to sabotage you. They're going to tempt you. They're going to destroy your castle from within.
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Not only do I think about it from yourself, like dealing with sin with inside you, but dealing with the sinful people or the toxic people inside your circle. I think that can affect you just as much,
Yeah. I really do love that. That's 100%.